Do I have to dance?
Yeah, you can dance. Dancing is encouraged. Welcome, everybody, to Soccer Wise. David Goss alongside one of the best in the business. No Tommy Scoops here today. He is off jet setting somewhere fancy around the world. I don't know, Dubai, Singapore, whatever it is. And we have MLS season passes on, but one of my favorites, Michele Giannone, in the building. Michele, you look very well shot right now. You look like you're in your own Apple TV show.
Yeah, this is it. How are you, my man? I'm excited to be here. I'm happy. I want Tom's life. For sure. He's not probably rubbing elbows, having coffee with Fabrizio Romano and stuff like that. He's gonna hate that. He's like, I watch him every morning at Morning Footy. Yeah. He's in Soccer Wise. And I don't understand. His days are longer than 24 hours, right? Because it's impossible to do everything that he does.
I just went to Harry Potter World. He's got the little time turner thing so that he can sort of go back and do whatever he needs to do. I don't, all of the good, I don't know that either of us could hang in Tom's brain inside of his life. Yeah. To be able to break stories all the time. He had Morning Footy, as you said, today, and then he's off traveling, and he's still breaking Dwayne Holmes stories and loans at left back to Charlotte FC. So he's grinding all the time. Obviously, I love Tom, and he will be back next week on the show. Michele here to fill in with me. I did yesterday the weekend recap, obviously NWSL Challenge Cup to start things off. So that was the start of the show. And then I dug into a little bit of the MLS stories, USL Championship kicking off last weekend as well. So I'm working on some interviews to cover that. Jordan Angeli will be back with me tomorrow. We're going to do a late show. She also is away and coming back. Where we break down every single matchup for week one of NWSL, but it's a loaded week. Another one of Concacaf Champions Cup. Now we have a USMNT roster. We've got a lot to go over in Major League Soccer. Michele, we're going to do the positive, but unfortunately, week 3, we're starting to get into the negative, and so we got a panic meter lined up for this show just to sort of help us gauge for some of these, especially winless teams, how worried we should be. That's why I brought you on. You're my worry wart right now, and so you're going to help me with that.
I have the hot takes too.
The hot takes.
I'm firing coaches already.
Yeah.
Hot seats.
You have to. You have started your first year though at Major League Soccer on the Apple TV content. You are doing the MLS 360 show in Spanish. We've seen you on the sidelines as well at some of the Sunday night soccer games. I believe you were in Houston last week. You will be in Atlanta this week as well. One of my favorite cities. How's it been so far?
Yeah.
How do you like it?
I've been blessed, man. It's been a dream, since I started working and covering Major League Soccer when I was at my former place of work, and now being there, living and breathing and dreaming 24/7 Major League Soccer, and having the support from Apple, from all the people at Major League Soccer, and having the opportunity to do both. I'm loving the studio work. We have a great crew, especially on the Spanish side. The English guys are amazing. But with the Spanish group, it's been great. I already filed my adoption papers for Gio Savarese to adopt me. He doesn't know that, but it's happening. I'm gonna be his adopted son.
Well, you're already Venezuelan Italians, and now you're covering Major League Soccer together. So that part already, Gio. I
just need to shave my head and start dressing like him. He's the best dresser in the whole Major League Soccer season pass. His taste in clothing and shoes and everything and food, the restaurants is mwah. I want to be his son. I already told him that. I'm going to be crushed when he leaves us to get because he's going to get another. Yeah.
We've already, Tom's reported him as a finalist for 3 of the jobs that happened this summer or this offseason.
I'm going to be crushed, but I'm so excited for him because I know he really wants it. He wants to be back in the game. But for now, we're taking advantage of having him in the studio, loving his presence. But it's been great. Again, I'm blessed that I've been doing the studio shows, and I've had the opportunity to do my thing, which is to be on the field, be the silent reporter for Sunday Night Soccer on selected games. Which selected games, I'm going to tell you a secret. It's when Miami plays Sunday Night Soccer against Houston.
2 of 4 so far, so it's pretty often.
Which was Houston 2 weeks ago. Last week. Or week 2, then it's going to be Atlanta, Miami. I'm super excited. It's going to be a great game on paper. I think that's the best stadium in the world, except for the turf. But, it is what it is. And then in 2 weeks, it's Miami, Toronto in Miami. And Yeah, it's been great. A lot of traveling, a lot of flying, but I really missed it. It's been great. It's been
Yeah,
great.
I'm excited to have you on. Obviously, you love this league as much as I do, and so it's great to have you as a part of it. We do have a big question in the chat from Jubber Dunkus, who says, does either of us want to take over the Revs? I think we can push Gio on that one. And then P in the chat says, better travel partner, Gio Savarese or Sam Stejskal?
Okay, it's
It doesn't matter. Sam already
Sam,
knows the answers, Gio,
Sam
and
on
that's
the chat.
fine.
Is he making the question? It's Sam.
I don't
right?
know. I don't have a way to confirm who is or what isn't in the chat, so I'm gonna assume no.
I'm gonna say, listen, Sam, it's a blast. He's awesome.
But he doesn't have the taste like Gio.
He doesn't have like Gio. He takes us to like the best Italian restaurants in New York, Stamford area, Connecticut. Like he's you know when you are with like a person that it feels like he's bigger than life. Like he lives close by. He lives in New York, close by to our Stanford studios, and he took us for dinner to his favorite place where he lives in New York. And when we got there, it was like red carpet. We were like celebrity superstars. When you are with Gio, it's like this is the life.
Yeah.
This is the life. I love it. So I love you, Sam, but it's Gio. Not even close.
I think Sam would agree with that as well, even if he is the fake person who put that in the chat. If you're watching live, feel free to send us any questions, any comments. We have our super chats open as well if you want to add a little contribution alongside that. If you're listening via podcast, we love you. We are glad that you are here. A lot more content coming for you this week. Let's dig into the breaking news, which was today. We got a USMNT roster for the Concacaf Nations League coming up next week. So these games will be a week from Thursday. They'll be going on at SoFi Stadium, I believe, in LA. And so it's going to be a semifinal on Thursday and then the finals on Sunday. If the US is lucky enough to make it, which would be a potential to defend every single championship ever because they've won all of the ones that this has ever occurred. The US will be playing Panama in the opening round. We got the 60-man roster a few weeks ago of what Mauricio Pochettino could draw from. And then we got the 23 here today. I'm not going to read off all 23 names. Maybe I'll get there at some point. But most of the names you'd expect to see, the Christian Pulisic's of the world, Matt Turner, Zach Steffen in goal alongside Patrick Schulte. A lot of the star names, Timothy Weah back into this group, Yunus Musa, Weston McKennie, all of them. What has stood out to you scanning over the list, and what do you think are the big storylines?
First of all, the goalkeeping situation, which I feel we've been talking about it for the last 2 years. Schulte has been getting the opportunities lately, especially January camp and the last camp, the first like Pochettino big call up against Jamaica for the Nations League, if I'm not mistaken. Also Matt Turner, but again, between the three keepers, who's the one that doesn't play? Turner, right? But he's been the starter for a long time. I know for a fact, and we already know, I don't think it's a surprise, and I think a lot of fans are not happy, but Pochettino really likes Zach Steffen. He really likes Zach Steffen. I think it's going to be between Schulte and Turner. If I have to pick right now, I think he's going to give the nod to Matt Turner, because now this is an official game. This is a semifinal of a tournament that you need to win, and Turner has been there for the last 2-3 years. Maybe Pochettino can senses that it's a little bit of a big stage that Schulte maybe is not ready for. I'm saying what I think I would do, and I'm projecting it to what I think Pochettino is gonna do. So yeah, the goalkeeping situation. I gotta say that I'm shocked of not seeing Alejandro Sendejas. I know he's not been like a perennial player on the national team lately, but he's been the best player of the best team in the continent for the last 12, 18 months with Club America. He's been great. And when you link to it and see Yunus Musa listed as a forward, we already know that Pochettino used Yunus against Jamaica as a right winger, right midfielder when they switch shapes to defend. So that gives me a sense that maybe that's the idea of Pochettino, using Musa as a right winger or on the right side. We got to remember that Tim Weah is back. So maybe there's a situation when we see Yunus or even Tim Weah as a right back, and then the other one as the right midfielder, right winger. So that takes Sendejas off the list.
Yeah.
We don't have Aronson either, which is a surprise. And then I'm happy to see Brian White and Diego Luna. I think they've been doing great in MLS. I think that the competition for the number 9 position, it's always open in the USMNT. For a long time, we thought it was going to be Balogun, but then now Pepe it stood up as the guy. He scored goals, but he's injured right now. We got Sargent back.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting what Pochettino is going to do there. But I think, not Sendejas, Yunus as a forward, the goalkeeping and the 9 situation is the things that I'm most looking forward to see what happens.
Yeah, I think on the goalkeeping side, when you look at the 60-player roster that was available, there's nowhere else he could have gone, really. Like, Drake Calendar's on that list. He doesn't start for his club right now, and I don't even know if that would be enough to get him back. Sean Johnson was on that list. Diego Kokin's on that list. The only one that would be is Matt Freese, and, like, I don't think I'm banging down a door for Matt Freese right now.
Or Fry.
Yeah. I mean, it's just there are not a lot of goalkeepers that are playing at a high level and starting consistently. I would still trust that Matt Turner wouldn't lose me a game, even if he's not at his peak. And I don't feel like I can say the same about Schulte or Zach Steffen. And, like, Steffen's been a really good shot stopper this season. It's been one of his better years so far that we've seen, especially since he's come back to MLS. He's got some weird stuff with positioning off the ball, and, like, he gets caught in weird areas where he's too close to a post and deflected shots and weird passes, but he's not preset to be ready for those moments. And so even his high-level talent in 1v1 moments, there's still a lot of stuff that has to be cleaned up, where with Matt Turner, like, he might not win you the game, but I don't think he's going to lose you the game right now. At center forward, I would expect Josh Sargent to get the starts, and then it's Ajamong and Brian White to try and fill in. I don't like talking about this because, of course, I pray at the foot of Patrick Ojigad. He's been bad so far in the first 3 games. And the Miami game, I think, probably highlighted that for a lot of people, right? Standalone, individual Sunday game. His team goes up a man early. They can't get a goal. But the Seattle game was tough for him. He was disconnected. I thought in the second game against Atlanta at home, his movement opened things up for Pep Biel and Abada and Zaha. His ability to start to pull center backs and understand when they were coming inside his wide attacking players and to vacate that space. But it was not him individually. And so whether it's a miscommunication with new teammates and Zaha and not having played with Biel as much, or maybe it's the pressure for him of, like, he scored the goal in January camp. He's the guy. They didn't sell him for millions. They also sold DPs, like, and there's a lot of pressure on his shoulders. So it's good to see him get called up. I think he deserves it for the 12 months of work. I think projecting wise, he can be a difference maker at that position. He just has to sort of figure it back out again. And I'm going to believe in that. And then Brian White, it's like, who else in CONCACAF you're going to throw on the last 15 minutes to just run through a wall and try to make life miserable? Like, if you're chasing a game or you have a lead, you saw what he did against Monterrey last week when he came off the bench and, like, he just pressures every single thing that happens. And I agree with you of, like, it's nice to see a player playing well be rewarded for that. Like, what else can some players do at some point? And it's also another position of weakness. So put in a guy who's scoring goals, who's playing consistently, and who's in a high level of confidence. So those are the big ones around the outside. Obviously, the big stars in the middle are going to be what decides this thing in the end. But it's cool to see some young players get opportunities. No bigger maybe than Diego Luna. We heard what Mauricio Pochettino said about him in January. He's not had the easiest start to MLS play. I think part of that is the nose. Like, he's dealing with that as an injury. It seems like it's limiting him a bit in terms of how much he can play in training and how much he can play and sort of breathe and run. And the other thing is RSL are not great. We're going to do our panic meters. They're not in there exactly because we've talked about them a bunch, as well as there's some other stuff going on around them that isn't exactly his fault. But it's still cool to see him have earned his spot in January, maintain it, and be in here with a bunch of big name attacking players.
Yeah, especially after the way he got left off of the Olympic roster. He was really hurt about that, and we and the fans, me included, because It's been a nice change not covering this team
Yeah.
after 7 years, and now I just watch it and
From afar.
and scream from my couch as a fan, which is pretty nice. But yeah, and going back to Acumen and physically, there's no other striker on the pool, maybe besides Brandon Vasquez, that has physically what he can offer. And going back to Charlotte, like you said, he sometimes feels like an island. Like Charlotte hasn't figured out how to use him because he's a guy that, yeah, he's big, he can move, but he's a big presence in the area. Against Miami, dude, Miami center backs are not that tall. And I don't think Charlotte realized that you need to feed him the ball, especially.
Yeah, every
up
cross
top.
was like waist level from
Yeah,
Zaha across the
exactly.
box. Yeah.
So I think it's gonna need some time to figure out also how to use Saha and how Saha can complement better with Biel, and between him it's gonna take time. But again, maybe he doesn't have the time that we think Dean Smith is gonna give him, right? He's a young player, he's under pressure, like you said, and if he doesn't start scoring goals, maybe Charlotte in the summer are gonna bring another striker, or even
Yeah.
before the window's still open until April 23rd. So I think there's a lot of pressure, like you said, on Aguiman, but I think in the long term he's gonna be fine. And
Yeah.
this also, like, this call up maybe helps him
Yeah.
mentally.
Agreed.
Like, hey, I'm getting called up to a national team, so he gets the confidence back. So I think it's gonna be okay.
You saw in the Miami game, there's one moment, and it's funny because the Miami game is one of those classic, they played better where they were 11 on 11 than they did a 10 on 11.
Yeah.
There's one moment where like loose ball slips out to him. He attacks a defender, takes a shot because he can shoot with both feet. He's fast, so you're always on your heels. Like that's what makes him great. Those are the types of things though that coming off a bench are easier to do because that's your role. Rather than can you manage your energy over 75 minutes? Can you manage the flow of the game? And that's probably the situation he'll be in with the US, where if they need a goal, he comes on late. You also mentioned his size as an option on long throws and crosses and set pieces and all that other type of stuff. You brought up Zendejas, which I think is a fair one of like, again, what else can you do? He is the best player on the best team in Mexico, which you could argue is the best team in the region. He has performed in big moments, scoring huge goals in championships, in the playoffs, in the Liga, all that type of stuff. He is one of those where I think in the national team, at the national team level, he is better as a piece than as a star. And so he keeps getting called into B team camps and not looking good because the game is reliant on him, and then can't get called into A team camps because he doesn't perform in B team camps, where I think he'd work a little bit better as a cog, keeping the game moving, helping Pulisic, making runs off of him, helping whether it's Gio Reyna in this tournament or Weston McKennie or whoever it is.
Yeah.
He can't get those jump opportunities.
You know who he reminds him of? And it's a different player, but I think it's the same situation that you are explaining. Sebastian Lletget. In the sense of, I'm going to explain it because I was told this directly by Berhalter at one point. We're talking about Lletget, and he told me Sebastian is a player that when he's surrounded by better players than him, he steps up.
Right.
And he's better. But when he has to be the guy, he struggles. And I think that's exactly what you're saying about Zendejas. Me, I would have called Zendejas, and going back to players that play in Liga MX, MLS, there's 6 MLS players on this roster. How times change, right? If this is a Greg Berhalter call-up, like Twitter, X, or whatever you want to call it, will be like having a full meltdown. Like Brian White, people will be like ripping their hair off. But again, it's 2-game window. It's pretty fast. I think there's gonna be a 15, 16 player rotation. At least on the starting 11. The third goalkeeper, which is Stefan, is not going to matter. Maybe Aguiman doesn't even see the field. So people that are complaining about Aguiman, about White, like, chill. We've been here before.
Yep. It is. It's going to be fun. Canada against Mexico, by the way. The other game, we don't have the Canada roster yet. We did get the Mexico roster. So we'll talk about that more as we get those. I'm obviously stoked about this Canada team. Jesse Marsh has had a pretty good few months. As the head
You're
coach
Canadian. We know.
of Canada.
You're Canadian.
Yeah, I'm proud to be as well, although I still need to work on that passport when I get it done. But I think Jesse Marsh has maybe taken my role as the honorary Canadian as an American because of what he's done so far We talked about Inter Miami a bit. Let's get into some of the favorite things you've seen so far. This is whatever you want to talk about. And I gave you this topic, just the first 3 weeks of MLS, what you've enjoyed. You've obviously been in the studio, crunching tape, watching all the games, experiencing it all. And you wanted to start with Messi himself and Inter Miami.
Yeah, not even Messi, with Inter Miami and Mascherano. I have to eat a big plate of crow with Mascherano. And I think, to be fair, when he got hired, it was he's friends with Messi, Suarez, Busquets, Alba from the Barcelona days, and he had a terrible track record as a coach. He had the Argentinian under-20 and the Olympic team, and he didn't even qualify Argentina to the World Cup, the under-20. Then they got in because they switched where the tournament was going to be played, and Argentina got the nod. And then, they didn't qualify, but now they're the home team. We're playing here, so let's give him a nod. And then he went to qualify to the Olympic Games. They did okay, but
it was the most bizarre 3 games you've ever seen. They had the VAR game 1, where they came back out of the locker room to refinish it. It was so weird.
But still, it was a team that compared to what Argentina has been historically in Olympic Games and U20, the talent that they have, it was a letdown. So this is first coaching, working professional team, right? And because it's Messi, Busquets. But I've been blown away having the chance to talk to him and seeing what Miami is doing on the field, the shapes they're using, how they switch shapes. And to his credit, the last 2 games without Messi, they've been playing great.
Yeah.
The last 3 games without Messi. Houston, Concacaf Champions League, and then again this weekend. And 2 of those games playing with 10 for a long stretch, right? And of course, it helps that you have probably with Seattle the best and deeper team in the league that you can rotate. But they've been playing like their A team, like they play Cavalier with their team, like Suarez played the whole game. The players have, and you could see it, and when you talk with the players, they have bought what he's selling. And you see it, for example, when they switch, you have Tadeo Allende and Telasco Segovia, who's been ahead. Like when you have Messi, Busquets, Alba, and then every player that you bring, they are ahead. It makes Miami probably right now like unbeatable, honestly. And I'm not the most pro Miami person that I didn't vote for Messi last year as MVP, and you know it. We've talked about this a lot. So I've been blown away, especially because they start normally on a 4-2-3-1, and then they switch to a 4-3-3. But when they have to defend, they switch to a 4-4-2, and you have Allende as a right midfielder wide, and Telasco Segovia as a left midfielder, and they're running their butts off, defending, covering space, and every sub it seems to be working. I was super down on Kremaski, but he's been great the last 2 games. We know he has a big motor, so he's going to run and cover space. But what you see is important when you have a new coach. It's very important that the players buy into it, right? They buy what you're selling, and Miami is doing it. You see it, and playing with 10. Yeah, they had to. They ended last game. They played with 4 defensive midfielders for the last 20 minutes of the game, but they have to because they're forced to do rotations too. So I'm very excited to see what Miami is gonna become when they keep playing together. When Messi's fit again, he should be okay to play against Atlanta. He was ready to play against last weekend, but they had to defend playing with 10. So but yeah, it's been great. And the first one that I said, I have to apologize to Mascherano because it's been great. It's been great. No notes.
He actually texted me. He's like, I'm actually waiting for Michele to apologize to me. So he's going to feel really good about this.
Good. Thank you. Because now I'm one of the faces of MLS. So, Mascherano, you need to pay attention to what I'm saying.
No, he absolutely is. Yeah, I agree with you. They've been really good. It was impressive once again. I mean, the whole thing's absurd. They've gotten a red card in all 3 games in MLS play, and yet they've gotten a result in all 3. They've gotten wins in 2. The Houston one, I think, maybe not as fair because they already had the lead and whatever. The NYCFC finish, absurd. And then this performance against Charlotte, and you said it and everyone else saying it, like Allende and Segovia are huge adds for them. I think one, just to have younger players who can run a little more and cover a little more ground and make life a little bit easier, as well as turn around for midweek games and go again on the weekend. Like, they were deep last year, but they were deep with veteran players who maybe couldn't react to the strains of the schedule. And so you, rather than trying to protect Messi or losing Messi to injuries, they ended up having to push those players. And I think you saw it down the stretch on the season. So now you've got younger players who can be factors and give you more minutes and cover more ground. But then he's also trusted the Yannick Brights of the world, and the Noah Allens of the world, who you need in an MLS roster because of, as every CSO complained about on the Athletics MLS survey, which you should go read, there are weird structures to rosters, and you can't just pick. You can't just sign the 23 best players. So you need those players to be a factor, and Mascherano, I think, has used them very well.
And of course, also, like, the young players are developing well, right? And of course, when I say Miami's unbeatable, they're not, obviously. Like, we saw what happened against Atlanta.
Yeah, except
in the playoffs.
If you play down a man 3 games and you don't lose, you're bordering on pretty close.
I mean, I don't. Yeah. So you have another year of Kremaski development, right? Of Ian Frey, of Noah Allen. Noah Allen is my size. I'm 5'7", and he's playing center back very well when he needs to play it, right? And he's, I mean, but he can play as a fullback. Ian Frey can play as a fullback. He can play as a center back. You have Kremaski that can cover a lot of positions in the midfield. Yannick Bright, Busquets is playing out of his mind. He looks fresh. Jordi Alba is a freaking train. He doesn't stop. He plays all the game. It's absurd. I've never seen Alba play live before, and I saw him on Houston week 2, and on the second half he was in front of me on the touchline by the benches, and I was just blown away. It's like this guy is playing probably like 30%, 50% of what he played at the level and the intensity he played at Barcelona, and the way he moves, the ball, the touch on the ball, the intelligence, and watching Busquets, I'm not discovering hot water here, like as a famous Spanish saying, it's like no estoy descubriendo el agua tibia, you know. I'm not saying anything that people don't know already, but watching them live is just absurd, right? Yeah. When you see it live on the field, it's like this is ridiculous. So they look great. Mascherano, I think, is doing a great job moving the pieces, switching on the tactical side, different formations, different. And again, they have another year of development with Frey, Noah Allen, Kremaski, Yannick Bright, and they've hit on every transfer. Segovia, give him the U22, the best U22 of the league already for this year. Allende, it's absurd. He can play as a right wing, right midfielder. He can play as a 9 when Suarez is not here. So they've been bringing players that can play multiple positions, which helps. Yep.
And then they've actually done one more. So I think dropping this morning, they've officially signed Baltasar Rodriguez on loan, 21-year-old attacker from Racing, who played on the Olympic qualifying team under Mascherano. Did not make the Olympics, but played a ton of minutes on that team under Mascherano, and played a little bit, I believe, with Tomas Aviles at Racing as well. And again, he's an attacking mid. He plays as a 10 for the most part. He also plays out wide. So you get that flexibility. I also do think the 10 position is the big hole in that. I don't think that's the right spot for Segovia. I don't think it plays to his strengths. I think you want to get him isolated a little bit more often, or at least give him the freedom to come inside or not. And it felt like moments throughout the Charlotte game where he was more the 10 because Benha had to get taken off because of the red card to Ustari and everything else. I just thought you saw a little bit more of the limitations to his game, where if this is a player in Rodriguez who can fill that 10 role sometimes, one, can you make life easier on Luis Suarez so he doesn't have to do both when Messi's not in? And then can you keep everyone in their right position? So it's another big addition for Inter Miami. They continue to add players who they think they can get legitimate minutes out of and deepen their team. And as they try and go deeper into Concacaf Champions Cup, they've got Cavalier coming up on Thursday. We'll talk about CCC or CCL, whatever you want. We had someone in the chat who said that their flight to Kingston is tomorrow, so they have the fever. They are stoked, which I am very jealous of because it's going to be an epic setup for that one. But Inter Miami trying to challenge across all fronts. Like, they're going to need that depth and they're going to need that cohesion. And I think that's what fell apart at the end of last year against Atlanta. And we'll see that revenge game on Sunday night that you will be at. What is your next one? What else has been your favorite so far?
I mean, man, I got so much wrong preseason. I mean, Philly, right?
Yeah.
I had them on my previews outside of the playoffs. You know, I thought it was gonna be a big transition moving on from Jim Curtin and the way they played, selling players like Jack McGlynn and bringing a coach that has a different philosophy, that is the Red Bull style, pressure, 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 and the way the three up front have been linking up. Of course, Taibaribo, what can we say? The poacher, big presence in the box, and they bring this the Uruguayan that I'm blanking right now, to be his
Damian.
Damiani,
Yeah.
yeah, Damiani. So to be his, maybe
You just don't like
his
South
option.
American Italian heritage players. You just
Yeah, it's
you're
just Venezuelan
anti.
Italians or both. No. So under now under this system, you see again, it's not easy to play this kind of soccer, right? And it's just, again, the caveat is just 3 weeks, and we know this Red Bull system, this high pressure, asphyxiating the rival. It's difficult to sustain the whole year, but you see it. If you go back to week 2, there's a shot, like a replay that you could see it when Quinn Sullivan makes a tackle and he wins the ball, how he celebrates like he scored a goal.
Yeah.
So that tells you that the players are all in, right?
Yep.
With the new coach and the new philosophy. And I
Which,
think
by the
Phil-
way,
Yeah.
just to throw in here, it's return to the philosophy, because that, if you ever go to a youth setup in the US, Philly will lose, like they'll force out balls for throw-ins, and you will see the team all scream in unison for the first like 10 minutes of every U17 and U15 game. And you can be watching other games and be like, oh, Philly's playing. And what Quinn
Yeah.
Sullivan's doing is the way he was trained. And that sort of,
Yeah.
I think, is this idea of Bradley Carnell is bringing the DNA back so that the Frankie Westfields of the world and the Quinn Sullivans can play at their highest level.
Yeah, and I don't think, and I think I don't want to sound repetitive, but I don't think that people truly understand how important and key, vital for players to buy in on the coach, especially when the coach is new. And I mean, Philly went all out in the sense of, like, I was told that they were the ones that called Houston and say, hey,
Right.
Jack McGlynn it's doesn't fit our system. This is the way we're gonna play. We know you like possession. And Houston said, F yeah, we'll take him. But it's like Philly went all out. It's like, we're gonna get rid of the players that our coach and our front office think they don't fit the system anymore. This is the way we're gonna play, and we need the whole locker room to buy in.
Right.
And if you don't buy in, or you don't like, or you don't fit, you're gonna be gone. So I mean, it's not the best way maybe to work with a locker room, and that can, again, worn out on players physically and mentally through the year. But so far, just in 3 weeks, it has looked awesome.
Yep, it's been incredible. The run continues with the win over the Revs. You've got a couple more in here. Which one do you want to hit next?
You tell me. You tell me one.
I want to talk to you a little bit about San Diego, because
Let's
you
go.
live
Yes, San Diego. That's the
in
other
San
one that I
Diego.
had.
You've lived
Yeah.
there for a few years, so you've seen this club be built from the
Yeah.
outside. You've been around it over the last year as they've had big events and brought people into the training grounds and all that stuff. And of course, then they get their home debut last week. They give up their first goal this week, and they get a win without Yuki Lozano. And like, this is, I'm not saying they're St. Louis from 2 years ago. I'm not saying they're going to win MLS Cup, but year one, they are a real team.
It's a shocker. San Diego, it's a shocker. I can't believe what I'm seeing. I remember, I went and saw the training ground facilities right now, which is probably one of the best in the country nowadays. When it was a golf course, like they didn't even started building yet. That was like 2 years ago. And talking with the people with Tom Penn, talking with Mikey Varas, talking with Tyler, their GM, and it's they're in sync. And you remember when Weavy and Doyle came to do the expansion draft, and they were talking with Mikey Varas, and they said, hey, how your team is gonna play? And he did like this, like, in our veins. This is the DNA. We want the ball. We don't care where we're playing, against who we're playing. This is our identity. And you're thinking it's like, yeah, sure.
Right.
Dude.
You say
like,
that
yeah.
now.
Right, yeah, sure. And then when you get hammered 3-0 against the Galaxy on the opener, what are you gonna do? And Zip, they've since minute 0 of that Galaxy game on the opening game, they show their identity. And they played there. They won at RSL against the altitude. It's a tough play to play. You're down 1-0 minute 17, and you came back. And after the RSL goal, San Diego was another team. They got the ball back. They start pressuring. They won the possession, which is difficult to do in altitude, again, RSL. And they're playing the way they told us. And they warned everyone that they were going to play. We're going to have the ball. We're going to pressure you. We're not going to deviate from that. Doesn't matter, again, the rival, where we're playing, how the score is. And they doing it. Hats off, man, because they put their money where they put their mouth.
They are doing fire alarm testing in my building for safety reasons. So just warning you if you hear that going on in the background. But I completely agree with you. To actually step on the field and do it in the challenge and do it. And I think we saw more holes in them against RSL. I think one of the things is the Galaxy in St. Louis. Well, the Galaxy we'll talk about in just a moment. St. Louis. But in general, those are good teams. They have clear identities, which is almost easier, I think, for San Diego to start because they're somewhat more predictable in what you're preparing for. RSL don't have that as much. And so I think you saw some of the gaps in San Diego this week. And yet they came back, as you said, they found their footing. They found their footing as the game got longer. Their possession built rather than running away from it, which is not what you can say the same for Houston this weekend and what they put out on the field. And without Chucky Lozano, they found match winners. They found big moments. And like Andres Dreyer is fitting in really well. San Diego hosts Columbus this weekend. That is going to be an awesome game to watch. Then they go to Austin. Then they host LAFC and Seattle. So it is like a huge run coming up for this San Diego team. And again, they don't need to win every game. They don't need to be first place. Just play the same soccer through those 4 games as you've played so far, especially against Columbus, because I just want to watch it. And there's a pretty good chance that you're going to be one of the best teams in the league. Let's jump into our panic meters now. Are you ready?
Yeah. I wanted to say something real quick with San Diego, because I've heard this also from the fans here locally. It's like, oh, this is not the team that we got promised. Like, where's De Bruyne? Where's Sergio Ramos? Where are the big signings? It's going to be a slow burn. Those players are coming in the future, probably not even this summer. They're trusting in their academy work, but they're starting their highest age on the academy that's going to start. It's U12.
Right. They're going
so those players are not going to be ready until like 3-4 years maybe. It's going to be a slow burn. They have the means. They have the identity again. They have the plans, but fans have to like separate reality from expectations. And so, I mean, for now it's working. The big players are coming, but it's not gonna be like a cascade coming in like in the summer now. De Bruyne and all the big names are coming in. 3 big DPs, right. So they have a plan and they're executing it, and we see it on the field.
Shout out to Luca Bombino for getting minutes, the loan from piece. Let's go into our panic meter. So for this, we were talking about some of the teams this so far that we think are in a little bit of trouble. And so I decided to put this together to put it on a scale for everyone. So we're going to go each team, we're going to put on a 1 through 5 panic meter, 5 being the worst, 1 being okay. What we have right now to do this is the winless teams in Major League Soccer through 3 weeks. So Houston, the Revs, Toronto, Montreal, KC, and the LA Galaxy. We will hit all of those teams in our panic meter. The other teams we could add, the teams sitting on 3 points right now, are Orlando, Portland, RSL, and Austin. I say that we should take Orlando and RSL out of this. I think Orlando, I'm not as worried about. You agree. We've done a ton of RSL talk, so we won't put that there. They're still looking for the center forward and all of that. Portland and Austin, where do you think they sit? Would you have them in this conversation?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Especially Austin. Do you want me to give a number right now or just
no? Let's say Austin. So for Austin, they're sitting on 3 points. They started the year at home against SKC. Reminder, an SKC team that is in this conversation as well, and one that was coming off Concacaf Champions Cup. They then played at Portland. They lost. another team that is in this conversation, and they lost this weekend 1-0 at home to the Colorado Rapids. They now have coming up at LAFC versus San Diego and then at St. Louis. And so if we're bringing them in here, how high is the panic meter and why?
I want to say 5, but I'm gonna be a little. I'm gonna be a
We're
little.
gonna have to rescale this thing after 2.
No.
when we're
Conservative. No,
five.
I'm gonna say a 3.
Okay.
3, right? And I fearful a little bit of Nico Esteves. I love Nico. I think he's a brilliant coach. He has great ideas. But I know the Austin fan base didn't took very well when he got signed. They spend a lot. I mean, you guys talk about the front three spending $3 million between Bukhari, Uzuni, and Vasquez. And Uzuni needs time. I was told from people in the building that he's amazing. Uzuni is gonna be great. Like since even in the first training session, they were like, okay, yeah, he's a real deal. We know he can play it, and he's gonna play it wide as a left winger. But he's number 9. Like he scored a bunch of goals in the Spanish second division. So there's gonna be a little bit of movement and interchangeable between him and Brandon Vasquez. But yeah, there's pressure on in Austin. They're starting to mount because we know that's not the fan base. It wants results, and we know he can be a pressure cooker. And we know the owners of the club spend big. They have a lot of like media attention. We saw like Matthew McConaughey on camera the other day on the stadium. So they need results, and I'm fearful. I really want them to give Nico time and give time for him to work with Uzuni. Now they need more from Danny Pereira. They brought Ilya Sanchez, who's been playing the 6, that deep position, so to give more freedom to him, to Pereira, to Wolf. Those guys need to appear because, you need service from the midfield, right? I'm a little bit worried that they're not going to give Nico plenty of time. If we get to like week 10 and this team is sitting on like 8, 10 points, I don't think it's going to happen. But if it happens, I worry that they could like trigger that too soon. So I'm worried. I think I'm more worried about Nico job security than Austin as itself, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I don't agree, but I understand the point. It's a lot of money to have spent. And so if it doesn't go right, you don't get rid of the players. Rodolfo Borrell is in charge of all of this, not going to get rid of himself. So it would fall on Nico Esteves. Now, I will say, I think where they're at, Borrell is connected to Nico because he hired him. And so you're trying to keep that pressure off everyone as long as possible and trying to keep that intact. But I understand your worry because my worry is structurally, I don't know how it all fits. It was the question I asked sort of all offseason is like, Bukhari going to play behind these two, right? Who is the creative force? And that was the problem in the past, which is a completely different team. So it's not technically connected, but like Driussi was a goal scoring 10. And there was no metronome force that creates chances. Josh Wolf tried to build it out of the system, and it didn't totally work. Maybe Nico Esteves can do that as well. But either way, you've got a lot of finishers. You don't have a ton of creators, and you don't have a ton of creators that can operate in tight spaces centrally. And so it shouldn't fall on Danny Pereira because I don't think he should be that player, but it might. And that's the same thing we've said for the last 2-3 years is, oh, well, it won't be anyone else. So maybe it'll be Danny Pereira. So to have them have spent all this money and be in a better position, but in the same spot is very, very odd to me. And I think Joe Larry wrote about it well on Backfield. So go read that of just like that lack of a true natural creator in there. In a league where that is super common, they've got to find ways to get service to their attacking pieces in a different way. And they don't have that yet.
Talking about the way the team is structured, I've been told by a couple people inside the league that they question the Brandon Vasquez move, how much they spend on him and making him a DP. And then you go by Uzuni and you spend what you spend for basically not the same player, but they're both number 9s. And now you have to figure out how to make them work all together, like you said, with Bukhari and see how they fit. So they question that roster structure, especially why. Then if you knew maybe they didn't, but if you knew or you had Uzuni on your plans, right? Maybe not spending the 10 million and bringing Bando Vasquez as a DP and use it to bring a number 10 and mimic what we were doing with Driussi. So that's I think you nailed it right there. But at the end, it falls on Nico
Yeah.
to figure it out.
Right.
And that's a pretty unfair position to be. I mean, not unfair. He's the coach and he's making a lot of money.
But the pressure is there.
But there's I think he's under a lot of pressure and hopefully they give him time. But again, you nailed it. The roster structure is not what I would have done, and people inside the league have told me it's kind of weird what they did.
So the panic meter there, 3, I think we agree. Let's set it there. So Austin we bring into this. Portland is the other one. Portland started the year by, again, getting smoked by Vancouver. Early red card. Doesn't seem to really matter because they don't learn from their mistakes. Then they got the 1-0 win at home over Austin. Then they go to Nashville this weekend. They give up 2 penalty kicks in the opening, 30 minutes? James Pantama saves both of them, and they still lose 2-0 on the road at Nashville, a team that had been looking for their offensive form already this year. Portland now goes at home. They will host the LA Galaxy. They then will go to Colorado. They will host Houston, and then they go to Austin. So a reasonable stretch now coming up for this Portland team. Where's your panic meter for this club? How much are you worried about the Portland Timbers?
I mean, I will say also a 2 or 3, but the caveat is that I didn't expect much for Portland.
Yeah.
So I think they're doing it. They're doing mostly what we've been expecting. Obviously, well, like you said, the red card on the first game, maybe that was a harsher result that it should have been, or maybe not. Probably it was a harsher result that should have been. But again, with Portland, like I had it on the bottom of the Western Conference. Da Costa looks like a nice player, like a good player, but he's more like as a number 10 that is going to bring a lot of assists. He's not going to score however goals Evander goals scored.
18 or something?
Yes, 18 and 18 assists, something absurd. He's clearly not Evander. I don't think Phil Neville knows what he wants to do up front. He's been playing Kevin Kelsey. I know for a fact I was told that Felipe Mora is starting to get like why am I not the guy? I should be the guy. So he's not happy coming off the bench, and I don't think Phil Neville is in love with Felipe Mora. Oh, now I hear it, but it's fine. And I just don't think that Portland has a lot of talent to work with. Like that's why Evander was so high on my MVP list last year. Like he carried a roster that had no business being what it was, and this is gonna be a long year. We know Phil Neville is not loved as a coach for between fans, pundits, and everyone around the league. So, but I didn't expect. I didn't expect anything from Portland. I'm gonna keep talking while the thing goes off. And yeah, I will say like the panic meter. I'm gonna go 2 because yeah, it's happening what I thought it was gonna happen.
I think he just told me that if there was a real fire, we should have left after giving us this announcement 5 times about how we shouldn't leave. So now it is finally done.
Good.
I agree with you on a lot of this, which is I didn't have huge expectations for Portland. The Evander stuff that I always thought was funny last year is they finished 9th. They were not good last year. So you lose Evander. The idea was, and we did our preview with Cascadia FC's own Jeremy, and it was like, well, they'll be better defensively. Well, Kamal Miller picks up a red card. It was McGraw this week. The penalty kick, the opening penalty kick was, gets turned by Surridge and then dives in from behind going into the box. And structurally, nothing looks better. So you've lost the best attacking player outside of Messi, maybe in the league. You've lost your best player, and you have not cleaned anything else up. That's the panic for me. Is like, I don't understand how Portland's taken. It doesn't feel like they've taken a step forward defensively. They've obviously taken a step back offensively. And it's like, well, Jonathan Rodriguez isn't back. Yeah. I don't know how far in a hole you can be when Jonathan Rodriguez comes back for the last year's 9th best team and still sort of make any sort of a run this year. So my panic meter is a 4 for the Portland Timbers because I don't know that a lot of this makes sense. And I think I'd be worried about what this season looks like for this team because all of the worst tendencies of the last 18 months all are still on display every single week for this team. So those are our two teams on 3 wins. Now we go into our winless group. Let's start with Houston because Tom reported, and then it was made official that they've made an addition this morning. They brought in Dwayne Holmes, a name a lot of USMNT fans will be familiar with, was one of those guys who went over to Europe at a really young age as a teenager and found his feet in Europe. I believe he's from Georgia originally, the state, not the country, in the United States, and then played it basically in the English Championship his entire career, most recently at Preston North End. He's 30 years old now. So he has been brought in. He was a starter for 3 years in the championship, and now he's been coming off the bench more this year. So he is coming to Major League Soccer for the first time in his career, and Houston brings him in. My reading from the outside is just, it's a fine move. I think he's probably a good player. I don't think he drops your floor, but for a team that's still trying to figure out how to replace Coco and Ache, that has nothing to do with what Dwayne Holmes, I think, can bring to this roster.
So what's your number?
So my panic meter for Houston, I think last week it would have been a 2, and this week it's a 3 because they got the result in Columbus by changing the way they play. And my confidence in this team was no matter how bad the results were, they wouldn't do that. And I think their ceiling as a club this year is to continue to be a possession team, even if they're bad at it at times. Being an outlier, being hard to play against, being a different challenge, being a home team in Houston in the summer that's knocking the ball around and making teams run, that's their ceiling, even if it's not the same as it was the last 2 years with Ache. And so that gives me a little bit of worry, so I will say it's a 3.
Okay, 5 is the highest, right?
Yes.
I'm like a 7, dude. Listen, what I saw against Miami was terrible, and I had the field perspective. I was telling you a story that I reported during the broadcast. At one point, during the first half, the midfield was so bad that Ben Olsen turned around to Juan Guerra, his assistant. He's like, "I want to take all of them out, like all 4." I don't think. And I told you this. I don't love the McLean Arthur double pivot. I don't think McLean is fit for that position. I think McLean shines when he doesn't have to defend that much. He's slow. He's brilliant with the ball, the service, the corner kicks, free kicks, whatever. But we saw the best of McLean when he played this position a little bit on Philly, but we saw it just recently on the January camp with the USMNT when he played as a 10-ish with people that cover his back. So, and I agree with you. I was listening to your conversation last week when you guys were debating what's missing the most here in Houston. Another center back, because I mean the Michele loss is huge.
Yeah.
Or a 10, and I agree with you. A 10 is more important in this league. Like you can have kind of iffy defense. You don't need to have like that big center back like Michele to make it work. But if you have a 10, a big time 10 like Evander with Portland, you can make it work, right? Mm-hmm. Houston has none of that. They have Nico Lodeiro, but then he's playing as an 8-ish right midfielder. Nico is obviously not the same player that he was at Seattle. Ben Olsen told me right away, because I had the opportunity to talk with him, like they brought Josh Wolf as an assistant this year, and one of the best U.S. soccer strikers of all time. And he said he's been working with the strikers, especially with Ponce. Mm. They need Ponce to score goals, but again, he doesn't get the service because the midfield has been more worried about defending and getting destroyed than actually making plays and having the ball. They had 34% possession against Columbus. Like it was so bad that from afar it looked like, okay, we have to play Columbus. Let's just defend for 90 minutes and see if we can hold the 0-0. And going back to Ponce real quick, Ben Olsen told me, like, we truly believe that this guy can be a 20 goal scorer on the MLS. But I told him this directly. We need at least 15 from you. If they don't get 15 goals from Ponce, this team is going nowhere, especially with that midfield. I think Holmes can help, but I think you had a player between Bassi and Lodeiro that kind of do the same thing that Dwayne Holmes can do. I don't know. It doesn't move the needle for me, this signing.
I think the argument there would be, agreed that it's similar to Bassi and Ladero. It's another one. So now,
Yeah.
can you push Ladero a little bit higher, or do you not have to start Kowalczyk? Like, it's another option. Holmes is like Danny Pereira style dribbling center mid, not a passer. And so maybe that opens up more things in the game because you don't really have players that take defenders out of the game. So if the ball doesn't move quick enough and perfectly enough to open up chances. But a year ago, if Houston played Columbus in that game, they would have tried to go toe for toe in possession.
Right.
And that's not who they are anymore. And I think
Yes.
that's the part that's a little scary. Now, Ben Olsen will probably tell us, like, yeah, but at least we scrapped and we were committed and we got the 0-0 where against Miami, they gave up and walked away. And, like, that's fine. But then it goes into what were your expectations for Houston this year? And then I think that's sort of what sets this. So I'm at a 3, you're at a 19 out of 5 on the scale for this team.
I don't think people have truly understand how big Coco Carrasquilla was. Like it's like I was making the joke this weekend with the Galaxy. We're gonna talk about them. It's like, congratulations, Ricky Puig, for winning the MVP of 2025.
Yeah.
Just give it to him already.
It's the Peyton Manning MVP where he sat out and they won one game.
It is the same thing with Carrasquilla. That midfield, we saw it against Miami, and we saw it through the first 3 weeks. If you get a little bit of pressure on McLean and on Arthur, you're done. You're done. They're prone to mistakes.
Yeah.
And I'm very worried that this team is not going to make the playoff this year.
So let's continue on here with our winless team. So that gives us Houston. The other team, we've got 2 more teams sitting on 1 point, and I believe all the other teams are on 0. We've got Toronto, who, I don't know, that probably is one again that goes to expectations. They were the last
Let's not talk
team.
about Toronto.
Okay, they were the last team in our over/under. We're not going to do that deep right now. I also want to throw actually Montreal in this. Montreal starts the year on a 7-game road trip or a 6-game road trip. They're in the middle of it. I'm not going to throw alarm bells. My panic meter for them would be 1, maybe 2 right now. Prince Owusu got hurt this weekend. That's a little worrying just because he's been good for them. But you're seeing some stuff out of the young players. They're on this road trip. There aren't really huge expectations. The hope is just that they don't get so discouraged that everyone's out on the coach.
To give props to Montreal. Sorry interruptions. They've played again on the road, like you said, obviously, and they play well against Atlanta. Maybe they should have gotten the tie there. They lost with a goal in the last 5 minutes or something. They've been playing well, and they got players back like Opoku. They're gonna get back at some point. I guess Vrioni is gonna play.
Yeah.
Their only DP. So. And
I think Vrioni actually came in hurt, so they're just trying to manage him back to not waste him. So
and we know that Courtois is probably the most underrated coach in Major League Soccer. He will make the best he can do with the roster that he had. We saw it last year, and Montreal. It's against I can't imagine what it's like to be on the road for basically 2 months.
Yeah, so it's 7 games. I went and read it because I should have done that the first time. They lost by a goal at Atlanta in a late winner, Latte Lock.
Yeah.
They lost by 1 at Minnesota as well, who is a team I think is good.
Yeah.
They lose by 2 at Vancouver, which I think is frustrating because Vancouver's coming off CCC. They're a little bit thinner, but they are one of 2 perfect teams, and you have to fly all the way across country, the furthest trip you're going to take. Now they go to DC, Nashville, Chicago before Columbus to finish it up. DC has started well. There's maybe some results in there. If they can get 4 points out of the whole thing, I think that's probably enough. But okay, so we're going to move on from the 2 Canadian teams and let's go into our final few teams, and let's start with the Revs. The New England Revolution lost once again 2-0. They have yet to score a goal in 3 games. It's been at Nashville, home to Columbus, and then home to Philadelphia this weekend. They now have on the road at NYCFC. They host the Red Bulls. They go to FC Cincinnati, and then they go to Atlanta in their next 4 games. And, of course, the biggest worry from this weekend was that Leo Campana, 5 minutes into the game, had to come off the field for a non-contact injury. Caleb Porter, the last quote I think I got was the day of the game, where Caleb Porter said, obviously, it's difficult to lose your striker. There's no doubt. Not sure what the injury is or how long he's out. I have to talk to the medical staff, but that's always going to be tough. And now it is 3 days later, and we still haven't gotten any more update on Leo Campana. Where is your panic meter for this Rev squad?
It's high. I would say like 4 or 5 because it's also 0 goals scored, right? And I agree with what Taylor Twellman said. And we were talking about this on the Spanish shows on Saturday, and then on the wrap up on Sunday. I think Caleb Porter's seat should be starting to get scorching hot, and I'm going to explain why. He took a team that Bruce Arena the year before took to the playoffs, and when he got there, he started losing, and then he switched his words and his message, and he said, "No, well, this is not my team. This is Bruce's team, so we're gonna fix it. I'm gonna build my team, right? Now you did it. You did it last year, and now you finish it on this off season, and you're showing up like this. He had, I think, 7 new players starting in compared to like what 2024 opening day. The only one that repeated was Carles Hill, right? When you compare like the starting 11 from 2024 to 2025, the only one that repeated on that starting 11 was Carles Hill, and then on 2025 was 6 new players that he brought in. This is your team. This is your team, and I don't like when coaches throw players under the bus. It's like, this is not my team. I had to like teach some of them how to play again. This is something that he said.
Right.
So I think, and we know Caleb Porter, right? MLS Cup champion, crushing next year. MLS Cup champion, crushing. He's a 2-time MLS Cup champion. They spend the money and they brought the players that you wanted. It's on you. It's 100% on you. So I would say that the panic meter it's 5. I was high on this team. I really like the players they brought. I think they're building something good, but the team is not functioning well.
Yeah.
And that falls on him. And now without Campana, if he has to miss several weeks, their next 4, 5, or 6 weeks, it's just a brutal schedule. This team could be in real trouble. And I think Caleb Porter needs to start feeling the heat a little bit.
It will be there, especially if they can't score goals and fans are not engaged in the team. And like we've seen, the crowds have not. I mean, obviously the weather's not perfect to go to a soccer game right now in Foxborough, but like it has been tough. And then you go into, it sucks losing Leo Campana. They set a transfer, they set a GAM trade record, right? Like this is supposed to be a huge piece of your team.
Yeah.
But Maxi Urruti, like 5th minute, you're going to bring Maxi Urruti on the field. That makes me think he's going to be the starter now at that center forward position. It's not, can we move Ganago inside? Can we slide Carlos Hill outside maybe and become harder to play against? Or can we get more attacking pieces in here? Can we get Peyton Miller involved? Like there's other, I think, options. But with all the pressure that they do have and trying to get all the pieces to fit, I don't know how much he'll tinker with it going forward. And then you're sort of just running out the same thing, but with Maxi Urruti in 2025 instead of Leo Campana, which is not a fair comparison. And so I think the worry should be there. I don't totally understand the Jackson Ewell edition. I like Jackson Ewell as a soccer player. He doesn't make sense in this group because he wants more possession, but that should be Carlos Hill's role. But he doesn't protect a ton. He doesn't make a ton of runs out of midfield to give Carlos Hill options there or to link up with the wingers. Langoni's final third decisions have been tough, right? He beats 1, maybe 2 defenders, but doesn't have an idea of how he wants to finish it. And then he tries to keep going and going. And so you see a whole team right now that's trying to figure it out on the fly on the field. I do think Ceballos and Fofana are good. Now you look at 3 games for them. They shut out Nashville on the road. They give up 1 goal to a Columbus team that's been one of the most lethal in the league for 2 years. And then you give up an opening goal on a set piece against Philly. So like across those, 100 or 268 minutes, that's kind of been okay. The center back pairing's been fine. It is just the attack part that has been a struggle. And now you lose your big striker. So I think 4 or 5 is the right call on this one. I think this is like the big worry right now. It doesn't get easier, as I read off in the schedule coming up. And it's a club that has not really performed the best when the pressure's been on over the last few years. And I don't know that it's already the most unified group. And so to have this start and to have all of these moves, I think should be pretty worrying for all of them. Juan Garcia in the chat saying, what do you expect from them? And that's a good question. That would probably be the big scale, is what were your expectations for New England? And then where do they sit right now? But you spend the money that they spend, you go out and get the talent. I mean, Ganago is a potential DP that's not on a DP deal. So like you're talking about a fourth talent in a group. Leo Campagna the same. Like there is a good amount of talent in this group, and there should be higher expectations. Let's finish out with our last two. We've got Sporting Kansas City and the LA Galaxy. Which one do you want to start with?
We can leave the big one last, right? Galaxy.
Okay.
So
hit SKC.
SKC,
the get right team right now.
The what?
They're the get right team. If you want to get your season going right, like a DC United, you got to play SKC.
It's so difficult, no? Because we have the Peter Vermees godlike presence there. He's the GM, he's the president, he's the owner, he's the coach. Obviously, I'm exaggerating on the owner side and president, but he makes all the decision, right? He's not gonna get fired. He's not gonna fire himself. But when I see SKC, it's just I'm very high on Joveljic. I've always been super high on Joveljic. I think they made the right decision of moving on from Alan Pulido and bringing Joveljic. But the roster construction, it's weird. I don't love the Eric Tommy as a winger situation. I don't think I was expecting much more out of their midfield, and we're talking about last year. I don't think they know now how to use Agada with Joveljic on the field, which I think it's starting to create an issue. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't have a lot to say about SKC. I just think it's just a weird roster, and with players a little bit that are not playing in their best position. Again, like Tommy. I wouldn't put like Tommy on the wing. I think the midfield needs a guy like him, like they did in the past.
Yeah.
I mean, I want to think that they're gonna invest on another winger before the window closes or during the summer, because Joveljic is a guy that needs service, right? So, or maybe I don't know if you can implement something with Agada playing underneath Joveljic. So well, I don't know. I don't know. I will say like 2-3 because I expect a little bit more roster construction.
Yeah. I think the hope would be Manu Garcia gives you some of that, and Shiplev gives you some of that. Good. Yeah, and Manu Garcia looks good. Yeah, it's that, and then it's also just the defensive spine is not any better, and so Tamilia was not the reason why they shipped Tamilia. It's still sort of the same piece at center back. Zoran Basang being your defensive midfielder now as a converted left back who just is not really a full-time, ball winner, does not cover that much ground alongside a Radoja who doesn't cover that much ground. It's a lot of the issues you've had that are still there. And if the attack was humming, then it would probably cover some of that. And you're talking about a playoff team, right? Like you're talking about a 500 team, a team that can battle around between the 10 and the 6 spot. Yeah. But so it's all the same defensive issues, and the attack has not been improved. And as you said, Joveljic needs service. Like Jovelic's best season, the reason he was good was he was playing around what we now know as we get into the Galaxy, two of the best attacking pieces in the league, arguably the most important attacking piece in the league. And then Gabriel Peck as well. And so his life was completely different there. And SKC, if they're going to spend that money, like you have to replicate some of that for him, and they just haven't been able to do it. Let's finish on the LA Galaxy. I will put SKC at a 3. Well, maybe I'll put it at a 4, even though I didn't have high expectations because it has not looked any better than what it could have been, and that probably puts it there. And the LA Galaxy. This now goes to where you kind of expected from them. 3 games into the season, they haven't gotten a win, including the loss to Herediano. The second leg coming up, and we'll talk CCC in just a moment. Where are you at on the Galaxy?
Before answering that, let me ask you a quick question. Do you think there's a chance, looking at Galaxy right now, that they miss the playoffs?
I think there's a chance. My bet would be that they don't, that they do make the postseason this year.
I agree. But I will say that there's a big chance that they are like a playing team.
I would be shocked if they had a home game in the playoffs. Like this is a 6 seed or down.
Yeah, I agree. So, okay, Galaxy. I would obviously defending champs, the expectations. So it should be a 5. But I'm gonna be fair here. The injuries are just brutal. When you lost 2 of your 3 DPs, Painsil still has a month to come back. He's been a huge miss, 3 to 4 weeks. Ricky is not going to be back until late summer, maybe the end of August, September.
Yeah.
And after this type of injury, we guess he's going to come back and be similar to the Ricky that we saw last season, but you never know, right? Especially on the mental side, when you have that type of injury for players, sometimes they don't maybe don't want to push too much at the beginning because they probably mentally are scared of getting re-injured. But I'm sure that Ricky's going to come back well. But they brought this kid Sanabria from Uruguay. Now he's out for a month with the clavicle fracture, right? Defensively, they've been very uneasy. I thought Yoshida was terrible against St. Louis. If it's not for Garces closing everything around him, I think St. Louis scores 5 or 6 goals on that game. Now, then you have the two players that need to step up, not step him up. Marco Royce was better against St. Louis, but before that, he was the worst on the field every time he stepped on it. I'm not saying that Marco Royce was going to be Ricky's replacement, but we're going from one side of the spectrum, which is being Ricky replacement, to far, far away to be the worst on the field. At least give me something close to here, right?
Yeah.
To the Ricky service that I need. Fagundes hasn't looked well playing on the wing. Peck, I don't know what's going on. I think he's feeling the pressure of being the man. He wants to take one-on-one. And you see that mentally, he's like, okay, I got to step up. But I think he's pressuring too much. The miss against St. Louis with the whole goal in front of him, it's crazy. I mean, we saw goals from Peck last year that were on tight spaces, and he's a great finisher. And I don't understand what's happening. I think it's the pressure of, okay, nobody's stepping up. I gotta do it myself, right?
I would add into that. I think it's the pressure and also the moments where you see him come inside twice against St. Louis and curl that left-footed shot. Last year, he's doing that 3-4 times a game because he's always 1v1 because you have to send the numbers to Puig Ricky, and you have to send it to Painstill. Now Peck's seeing two against him every time.
Yeah,
I don't think he was the elite creator last year. He was the third creator or the second creator, and now he's being asked to do all these other things on top of just the mental side of things, which is like, oh, by the way, the whole team's on your shoulders. And I think you're seeing all of that sort of come together.
And please, I beg people to go watch the replay of St. Louis' first goal. Watch Royce. Did you go by and see it? Did you see the highlights?
Oh, yeah, the set piece where he does not make an attempt to defend.
He doesn't move.
Yeah.
He's the one covering.
And there's 4 rebounds? And
he doesn't move.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, if you're not going to give an F, my man, what are we doing?
Yeah.
Because since last year, you see that Royce shies away from the game too much. Sometimes, when you need for him to take over because he has the talent to do it, he shies away. And yeah, it sucks that you're coming from, I have Pencil here, I have Peck there, I have Ricky next to me, I have Jovelich up there. But no, man, now you need to step up. And he's not doing it, not even close. He's been terrible.
Yeah. So Juan Garcia says, shout out to Juan, having an MVP performance today, was 2024 a fluke and 2023 is the real galaxy. And then says, you can't really use the injury as an excuse because you knew Ricky Puig would be out. And I debated Tom on this show all offseason of would you put him on the season-ending injury list? I have said this many times. This galaxy conversation has to happen in a larger context of what they are trying to build long-term and how this year fits in. I think there's a pretty good chance that Ricky Puig, with his mentality and what he wants, you put him on the season-ending injury list, he's unmotivated, and maybe he leaves and is this club's not committed to me, I'm not committed to this. And
I agree with that.
And then the roster building stuff, I think, is less how do you win this year and how do you keep this whole group together in a competitive way as long as you can. And Doyle did his whole they're playing goalkeepers for a certain reason so that they can get sales. If that's the case, Let's get all the kids on the field. Like, let's do an NBA style tank here and then sell them all and like give them opportunity or know what you have from them. And that might be what it ends up being for the Galaxy. They have Herediano this week, of course. Then they play at Portland. They play at Minnesota. They host Orlando. And then they go to RSL, or excuse me, then they host RSL to close out the month. I think there's a pretty good chance that they still get the result against Herediano and move on, which will be positive in one way, but make it harder in MLS because they're already thin trying to compete across. And of course, the GAM numbers coming out that they have no ability to really add to this team and to improve it at all. So where are you on your scale? What's your number for this team?
I mean, it depends on the expectations, right? It's the Galaxy, the defending champions, so it should be a 5. But again, I don't want. It's not an excuse. Like on MLS, you're so. It's such a complicated issue to navigate when you have the salary cap, when 2 of your 3 DPs are injured, when you have probably the second best player in the league behind Messi with Ricky Puig missing 6 months, 7 months of the whole season, and the team depends so much of him, right? That I mean, it sounds like an excuse. And I know there's a lot of people that enjoy watching when the Galaxy and they hate watch right now, because now with Galaxy it's hate watch. If you're not a fan of the Galaxy, you're watching to see how bad it keeps getting. So I will say a 3 or a 4 because again, Pain City is coming back in 3 weeks, in a month. That's gonna help a lot. I mean, they have the kids and they have the academy. Like they did against St. Louis. Nice pieces. They have Winder. Yeah, I mean, they have the pieces. I mean, Yamane also got hurt. Like, I mean, we're talking, I mean, it's not just like, oh, yeah, your DPs are injured. It sucks. No, like, I mean, like the midfielder that you brought to replace Marky Delgado, now is injured for a month. Your right back is injured. Your center back is playing terrible. And I don't know, man. I'm gonna say a 3.5.
Okay, I'll say a 4. I think it would be a 5, but again, expectations I didn't have super high, and that's where I'll land on in terms of where I think they stand right now. Let's do CCC real quick. I think the Galaxy playing Herediano on Wednesday night. That one's at 10:30 at home. That's going to be a fun one to watch. I do think the Galaxy have a shot in that one. Inter Miami will go to Cavalier on Thursday. We talked about Inter Miami earlier in the show. They will go down to Kingston, and we'll be back on Thursday as well. Before that one, the other match on Wednesday is Vancouver at Monterrey. And the news came out. I saw it on Blue Sky from Hard Journalist, who says Ryan Gauld will be unavailable for a few weeks after suffering a left knee capsule sprain in the first half on Saturday. That was the big dark moment in the 2-0 win for them, as they are one of the 2 perfect teams in MLS. Jaden Nelson went out injured in the first 10 minutes against Monterrey in the first leg, and then Sam Adekugbe, after scoring a goal, 2 weeks ago or a week ago, he went off injured. So it's a Vancouver team that is already fairly thin. Sorensen, it seems like from his starting lineup against Monterrey in leg 1, the focus is MLS. I have no idea what we're going to see in leg 2. I do not know what like a JC Nagando, Edir Ocampo, Tate Johnson squad can look like in Monterrey. I liked what I saw in leg 1, but I'm a little worried.
I think it's an impossible task.
Okay.
What they're facing.
Thank you for putting words to it.
Without Nelson, without Gauld now, going to Monterrey. Monterrey is flying right now in Liga MX. And they have the roster that they have. It's on a little bit. I mean, Monterrey is not as high as Toluca or Mexico City, but you feel a little bit like it's uncomfortable to play. It's an intimidating stadium. I think it's one of the best stadiums in Liga MX and one of the best in the whole continent. And we're talking Monterrey, dude. Like, and I think you nailed it. What we saw on the first leg, leaving Brian White, Cubas on the bench, it said like, okay, we're here. We're gonna try and do something. They got the result, but MLS, and especially the way they started on MLS, it needs to be the focus. So no shame going to Monterrey. Maybe there's a miracle, but I think it's an impossible task. So I think at the end it will work better. if it happens, what I think is going to happen, that they're going to go out and then all the focus is on MLS and they could keep the momentum going.
So if that one's impossible, so that's our Wednesday and Thursday slate, then we've got Seattle at Cruz Azul to start things off tonight at 8:30. We've got Cincinnati. So that game's at 0-0. That ties at 0-0 right now. We've got Cincinnati at Tigres at 1-1. And then Columbus are hosting LAFC down 3-0. Away goals are still the decider I'm just calling it CCL. We're going back to it. So for anyone trying to figure it out, you don't have to go Google it yourself.
Concacaf Champions. That's how you say it.
Concacaf Champions. Campeones, campeón de campeón of CONCACAF. Do you have any hope for a Seattle or a Cincinnati?
I love Seattle. Seattle is gonna go by. The away goal, I think, is big, and we saw on Saturday against LAFC, like they're all in on CCC, to rotate the team. On Concacaf Champions. They rotated heavy. I think they have the pieces. They were so much better than Cruz Azul at home. So much better. That game should have ended at least 1-0 in favor of Seattle. But now, not receiving goal against Cruz Azul. They were with America, like the best Liga MX team, at least locally, for the last year or 6 months. But Cruz Azul now, they lost Anselmi, their coach. So they still have a formidable team and they're still like up there on the Liga MX, but they're not like the team that they were.
Is Chente coaching this team?
No. Vicente Sanchez.
Yeah, that's what I said. Vicente Sanchez. Chente, yeah. Me and Chente go back way. So
okay.
we're
I
on
don't know him
basis.
as Chente. I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
Vicente Sanchez, yeah. He's Vicente Sanchez, yeah. I mean, it's still Cruz Azul. You still playing in Mexico City at 7,000 feet elevation. It's hard, but I think Seattle has the depth, the quality to at least score 1 or 2 times. And I'm betting on a tie on goals there and Seattle moving on.
Congrats to Kalani Cosa-Rienze. He had the opening goal for Seattle this weekend and then signed his permanent first-team deal for the rest of the year coming out of the Tacoma Defiance. Georgie Munungu had the assist. Paul Rothrock had the second goal. So the Tacoma Defiance pipeline has been strong. It leads to Seattle's depth. It allows them to go out and spend MLS bucks like the Paul Arriolas and the Jesus Ferreiras because they have this core that they don't have to spend TAM money on fullbacks and backups and wingers and center backs and all that other stuff. Smetcher confirmed, Jeremiah Oshan put this out, that Pedro de la Vega did not travel to Mexico. And what he's hearing is that they expect him to miss, quote, a few weeks. So he could potentially return in time for a Concacaf Champions quarterfinal. But either way, he won't be available for this game as well. I like Seattle, like you said. I'm excited for this one. I think it's going to be one of those classic ties where we look back after the end and say they should have scored at home. Like you cannot leave too much work to do in Mexico, and that's what it feels like it's going to be, what we're going to come away with this for Seattle. And you know what? With Club World Cup and like their ability to, I think, contend for a supporter shield, maybe it won't be the worst thing. On the flip side, they could contend for this. Like they're good enough to win this thing, and to be the only one to do it and then do it twice
and they've done
pretty special as well.
And they did it.
Yeah.
They've done it. They won it. They know what it's like to go to Mexico and get a result. So, I mean, it's not the same players. There's no Ruiz, there's no Alodeiro right now, but it's Metzer, and it's a really deep and good team. So I think they could do it.
All right. The other one is Cincinnati going to Tigres. This is going to be so much fun to watch, and it's going to be a great one as well. And we'll be back on Thursday to break it all down for you as I have to go and run out of here. Did not think we would go this long, Michele.
I talked too long, man. Sorry.
No, not at all. It was a lot of fun. So thank you to everyone out there for watching. Thank you to all of you live in the chat. Thank you, number one, to you, Michele. Always love doing this, and I know I'll have you back on very, very soon. And we'll talk to all of you again very, very soon.
Vamos.
Yeah, sorry about that.